Hello, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of Up the Ladder podcast. This is Dr. Doug Endel with Westerville Chiropractic and Nutrition. And today I'm going to be chatting with you about one of my favorite topics because it's been really fun to experience and learn about over the last 6 months. I've used this quite a bit in the winter, and as I'm doing more training for my event, I'm using it a lot more now, which is cold exposure. So I first got turned on to cold exposure actually at a seminar. They had a breakout session, and a lady was doing breathing techniques. And the breathing techniques were part of a method called Wim Hof, or a guy who teaches it called Wim Hof. Which he holds a lot of world records for cold exposure. And so she was teaching some of the basic methods of breath work, which he uses in cold exposure. And so I took, in fact, some of us at the office together have done some of his online coursework, and I really recommend doing that because it's phenomenal breathing exercises, but it also, as you work through, gradually increases your tolerance to cold exposure. And so that's how I've gotten, I won't say good because it's not fun, but certainly better at cold exposure. And so today I want to talk about 5 benefits of doing cold exposure. And then at the end, I'll go through a couple of really simple things that you can start to possibly do to begin reaping some of these benefits. So the first benefit of cold exposure is you start to increase something called brown adipose tissue. And so brown adipose tissue is primarily found around the collarbones, neck, sternum, upper back area, kind of this upper torso. And it's unique in that it generates heat to warm yourself up by burning fat. And so normally you would need to exercise to burn fat, but this adipose tissue, this brown adipose tissue, burns it straight from your stomach, butt, hips, legs, and it doesn't require that you burn through all of your glucose and glycogen stores before you start burning fat. It does that by itself automatically. And it's activated with cold exposure. So you can get a lot of the benefits of fat burning strictly by doing cold exposure. Of course, if you include it with increased exercise, like we are doing in our Calendar Club Challenge right now every day, then you're only going to get extra benefits of fat burning as a result of that. So that's number 1. Increase brown adipose tissue, which burns fat once it's activated with cold exposure. Benefit number 2 is that it increases immune system. And so we could go into a deep, boring for me. I do not like, all of the different cell types of that are involved with the immune system. So we could go down a deep hole talking about a bunch of leukocytosis and granulocytosis and natural killer cells. But I'll save you the boringness of that, and just know that it increases the right combination of those immune cells to fight disease and infection. So benefit number 2 is that it boosts immune system and upregulates that. Number 3 is how I initially heard about cold exposure. And besides doing this breath work, was from listening to some different podcasts and reading books about longevity. So longevity is pretty much living longer and being healthy while you live longer, right? So that's the ultimate goal, is to not just live longer, but actually have life as you're living longer. And so the way cold exposure does that is there's a protein in your body called mTOR, and when this protein is down-regulated, meaning that your body starts to slow that protein cascade down, your body does something else called upregulates autophagy. And essentially, that's a big word that means your body starts getting rid of all the junk within your cells and lets it live longer. So this is huge. You hear a lot about autophagy. Essentially, you're getting rid of cells that aren't working correctly. You're getting rid of, like I said, kind of the junk inside of cells, or parts of cells that aren't working. And cold exposure increases that autophagy. It's got very similar benefits to increasing that getting rid of cell waste. Very similar to calorie restriction and intermittent fasting and just fasting in general. Those are some of the really huge benefits of doing the intermittent fasting along with blood sugar and that sort of control, which we'll talk about next with cold exposure as well. But that autophagy, getting rid of that cellular waste, is huge for longevity. And so cold exposure has similar effects of doing that fasting. I don't think it's going to be as long lasting as if you're doing intermittent fasting or prolonged fasting, right? You're going to be in that stage where you're increasing that for extended periods. But if you're doing this cold exposure on a regular basis, you're going to gradually be increasing that. So that's another big benefit of cold exposure is this increasing autophagy, or getting rid of cellular waste. Now the really good stuff. Those were good, but this is what I have been most excited about. Is this next one, which is increasing your metabolism and lowering blood sugar. So this is huge for people because there are so many people who are obese, overweight, have cardiovascular issues, they've got diabetes, and so this is something that is extremely beneficial at when done consistently, is great at helping to lower blood sugar. So the way that it does that is, when you're cold, your body starts to try to generate heat to warm yourself up or to keep yourself more warm, and that takes a lot of energy, and so you're immediately burning sugar from your blood to increase that, to build that heat back up. And so if your body is burning a lot of that sugar based on your blood right now, then it's not going to your liver, and your body is not going to convert that to glycogen or fat. So cold exposure also activates a hormone called adiponectin, and this hormone breaks down fat and shuttles it into the muscles, which again, if your blood sugar is not, if glucose or sugar is not in your blood, if it's being stored in your muscles or your liver for later, then it's not being converted by the liver to fat. And so the more that you can shuttle that blood sugar into your muscles, or your liver to store for later, that's a good thing. And so that's what this adiponectin does. It shuttles that glucose into your muscles so that it can use it for labor. And again, your muscles are going to be shivering. It's going to be using that energy, and that's why that adiponectin hormone is released. And so there's a really, really strong connection between people who are have obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and having low levels of this adiponectin. And so if you can increase that hormone by cold exposure, then you are, again, you're increasing your metabolism, you're lowering your blood sugars, and you're increasing this hormone, which is associated with those other bad conditions, right? That's basically metabolic syndrome. Number 5 is basically injury healing and recovery. So this is a super, super common question that I get in the office is, when do I use heat? When do I use ice? Is ice good? Is ice bad? When should I ice and when should I switch to heat? And so basically, ice is great initially for an injury because it causes vasoconstriction. And so anytime you've got swelling, ice is really good at controlling that swelling. So classic example is you really sprain your ankle really bad and you start getting a lot of swelling around that joint. Ice is great in that case because you don't want that swelling to basically spill out into other tissues. And so ice, along with, constriction and elevation, are fantastic for that. It's also good at controlling pain and muscle spasms. And so, you've got your natural kind of pain reliever and muscle relaxer with ice. And so that's, a lot of times I see this with like lower back issues. Your muscles, because of inflammation or in the joints of the spine, your muscles start to significantly tighten up to try to protect those joints from and protect you from moving when you shouldn't. And so ice is great at helping to relax those muscles. In fact, especially after an initial injury or the first couple of days, ice is better than getting massage because a lot of times a real deep tissue massage will loosen those muscles up too much and then you feel worse afterwards. And so you want to be a little bit more strict with the icing and how long you do it. You don't want to do, you don't want to lay on ice for super long periods of time because you get the same effect as if you had a super deep tissue massage, which is the muscles will relax too much and then you feel a lot worse afterwards. So so ice is great, initially. Another benefit that happens with ice, besides the, vasoconstriction, the pain control, the muscle relaxation, it actually happens after and while you take the ice off. So if you've been icing something for a while, you'll notice that when you take the ice off, the area is really red. That's essentially vasodilation. So your body is taking more blood to that area to try to keep it warm so it doesn't get too cold. And so along with that blood that it's bringing are kind of new and fresh cells that will help with the inflammation process and recovery process. And so it's that contrast between hot and cold and your body bringing more blood into that area. Obviously, it's not going to bring in as much as if you were heating, and that's where contrast, heat and cold together is super beneficial. But your body also naturally does that when you ice, right? Because, immediately after your ice, your body's trying to warm that tissue up, and so it's bringing more blood into that area to do that. And along with it is a lot of benefits for speeding up healing and recovery process that may have been slowed down because it was swollen before. So I usually tell people ice is better after an initial injury, usually for up to 3 to 5 days, depending on the swelling. So if you can have continued swelling, then you want to keep icing. Otherwise, after that 3 to 5 days, so typically after that 3 to 5 days, I usually recommend people start to switch to heat after that, for the most part. So as we wrap this up, what are some simple things that you can do to begin incorporating cold exposure into your daily lifestyle, right? So that's what we're all about, is is changing up your lifestyle and starting to include things organically, naturally into your life that are going to increase your health. And so cold exposure is not that difficult of a way to do that. One is kind of simple. You may be paying more, a little bit more for electricity by doing this one, but one is just keep your home temperature low. So, 60 to 65 degrees. That is going to give you a longer term exposure to that cold and naturally, again, kind of raise some of those hormones and that brown fat tissue. So not an easy one because everyone else in the family might not like it. And obviously this time of year you're going to be spending a ton more on electricity. Now one way to do this would be, I guess, in the wintertime, keep your house colder. That way you're actually saving on electricity because you won't be using as much of your furnace. So, however you want to look at it. But either way, one method is to just keep your home temperature low. The next one is cold showers in the mornings. I go back and forth on this. Sometimes the thought of a cold shower makes me want to just go back to bed. And sometimes, like this morning, I actually enjoyed it. I was feeling a little sluggish waking up, so nice cold shower actually got me a little bit more kick-started for the day. Ideally, though, you want to, if you're really looking for some of these benefits, you want to do this cold shower, at least 3 to 5 days a week. And that Wim Hof class that I was explaining earlier is fantastic at building up your tolerance to that and giving you the mental tools and the breathing tools to be able to do several minutes with cold shower with no problems. So ideally you would work up to 3 to 5 minutes of a cold shower, either at the start of the shower or at the end of the shower, however you want to break that up. But 3 to 5 minutes is your ultimate goal. You're not going to want to start with that. Typically you want to start with 30 seconds, 20 seconds, and start to build your way up from there. But again, I highly recommend that Wim Hof class. It's fantastic. I can help you find it if you need to. But he's a great guy who takes you through breathing exercises, stretches, all kinds of different activities. And built into the class is homework, which includes cold exposure. My favorite, I don't know why, but I'm a little different in the fact that I prefer an ice bath or a cold bath over just standing in a cold shower. I don't know why. I don't know if it's the fact that it's, I'm in the shower, half of me is cold and the other half is warm. And with a bath, there's really nowhere else to go. But I prefer cold water or an ice bath. You want to, sit or lay in that for anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes. And do this at least once to twice a week. So I've been incorporating this more. In fact, today I did a 10-mile hike with a pal, and that's going to be on my list to do tonight is a cold bath. So I'm usually doing these cold baths after some of my longer endurance events. But I would say after, at the end of the day, after you've had some good physical activity, is the best time to do a cold bath or an ice bath. So again, once or twice a week with the cold bath or ice bath, 5 to 20 minutes. Fantastic benefits. And occasionally I'll do like 5 minutes in a cold bath, and then go hop in a hot shower, and then jump back on a cold bath, and go back and forth a couple of times. There's some amazing studies out of Finland looking at this, that contrast sort of bath where you're hot, cold, and the benefits of insulin sensitivity, blood sugar regulation, all of these benefits that we just talked about. So there's not necessarily a right way or wrong way to do it. I would say you need to work your way up to at least 30 seconds to a minute if you're just doing cold showers to really get the benefits, right? Turning the cold water on for 10 seconds, that's going to be just a cold burst of water. You're not going to get those, these actual benefits that we're talking about. So it needs to be for a little bit slightly extended period of time. And that's why I like the cold bath. So start to incorporate this. Let me know if you do and how it's working for you, what you think. If you need any helps or resources or have questions about getting started with this, I'm an open book. I would love to help you explore this a little bit more. Like I said, it's really made a significant difference for me in my recovery. Also, there's a mental component to it, right? If you do something challenging mentally, like this first thing in the morning, sets your day up for a lot of other wins afterwards. So until next time, keep your head up, and everyone have a great rest of the day.